All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. And I want to take this time out to acknowledge a very special guest and a very dear friend of mine, and that's the one and only Coach Dennis Ward. Coach, what we are going to talk about right now is right up your alley. And these are your beloved Raiders. And as long as I've known you, you followed this team, whether they were in Los Angeles at the Coliseum, whether they were in Oakland at the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, and of course, now in Las Vegas. You have always followed this team. You bleed silver and black. You got your Raider gear on for this one. And I know you got plenty to talk about as we break things down for the upcoming NFL season. First things first, how do you feel with Antonio Pierce getting the full time job? And do you feel that AP is the guy that's going to get this thing turned around for the Raiders?
As far as AP is concerned, for me, I'm glad that they hired someone that the players respond to. As a coach myself for like 20 years, 20 something years now, um, that's the most important thing. The players respond to him, and I like that. They could have done it two or three coaches ago, and then it might have garnered some wins. Remember, we had interim head coaches that they didn't keep. Rich Bisaccia being the most recent one, and because they decided to just make these moves, in these spaces at these times, and they think they were the better moves. In the end, the players didn't respond. So that's my answer to that. I like the fact that the players respond to Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, I mean, you heard rumors about a lot of stuff going on. And I'm not going to delve into them because they're rumors. We don't know, like, clearly the full story when Josh McDaniels was the head coach last year. But I'll tell you like this, I second what you say about Rich Bisaccia because Rich Bisaccia walked into a very difficult situation taking over for John Gruden, got them to the playoffs, and they really had a legit chance to win that game on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then if you're the Raiders, you sit back and you see the Bengals win that game and they get on the run and get to the Super Bowl that year, and you're like, you know what, maybe that could have been us. But nonetheless, I think Mark Davis really dropped the ball after that. He was going for the quote unquote home run hire, and it was one of those. I said it was a bad move, then because we had already seen enough of Josh McDaniels to know that he was not a good NFL coach. And it's one of those where stereotypical Bill Belichick assistant, where this guy goes to a team and tries to be Belichick and it doesn't work. And of course, it worked for Belichick for all of those years in New England with Tom because he had Tom Brady. Now, fast forwarding to the present, I think that weighed on the mind of Mark Davis this past offseason. And then it also helped that you had veteran players on the Raiders, such as Max Crosby, who went to Mark Davis after the season and said, listen, you need to hire Antonio Pierce. And of course, we saw the Raiders team, respond when Antonio Pierce was the interim head coach last year. I think for me, the two games that won the job for Antonio Pierce last year, that Thursday night game against the Chargers, where the Raiders put up 63 points and they really could have put up more. And then coming right back right after that on Christmas Day, and then they beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. I think that's what got it for him. The team responded to him, and for me, one of the biggest things with AP, he knows this is his first time gig. This guy has an opportunity because he loves the Raiders. Grew up in Southern California. He was a Raiders fan when they were in LA, okay? And I'm sure he still was after that. But then on top of that, he's relying, on veteran coaches, on his mentors, to guide him through this transition. One most notably, Tom Coughlin, his former head coach with the New York Giants. And of course, they had success together there, winning a Super Bowl. AP was a starting middle linebacker. But AP does have a shot the locker room respects him, and especially the veteran guys, because it's one of those where, and we're going to touch on this as far as the Raiders, quarterback situation. It would have been very easy for when things went south for Davante Adams to say, "Hey, you know what? I want to go someplace else." Davante is sticking there, and I think having a guy like Antonio Pierce definitely helps that situation.
Well, let's go back to the whole Rich Bisaccia taking over after John Gruden got fired midseason.
Mhm.
Um, that team was actually extremely close. Now, let's go back and listen to what happened. Raiders had the ball to win the game in the red zone
Mhm.
and could have easily won that game. It wasn't like, and there was another controversial call where they blew the whistle and Joe Burrow threw a touchdown.
Yeah.
They lost the game by like 5 or 6 points.
Right.
How do you decide to move on from that when the team has not had that type of success in years? It just behooves me. And to think that all of the things that came with Josh McDaniel that next year, you had Hunter Renfrow go from a good player, a Pro Bowl player, to someone that's completely ineffective. Then you rendered Darren Waller completely ineffective. Then you jettison Derek Carr, let him leave and get nothing for him. Essentially, you set your franchise back. You had assets that you didn't get anything out of, and then you let assets go that you didn't get anything for. And
Yeah.
those are the two things I can't forgive Josh McDaniels for. All right, you don't like Derek Carr? Fine. Get some for him. Get some for him. The year before, had they traded him right after that year they lost to the Bengals, when you came in, right, and you didn't want to give him this contract, you'd have got a second round pick,
Yeah.
maybe a late first. It's all about assets in the NFL. This is a talent-driven league. If you don't have talent, you don't win unless you're going to hit on a bunch of fourth or fifth round picks, which is highly unlikely. You have to have high draft picks, and you need to pick good players. So that's my whole thing with the whole Rich Bisaccia thing. It should have never been a question. He should have been a coach for. They should have gave him a 2-year deal and then decided what they wanted to do after that. But I realized that Mark Davis falls in love with coaches, and I don't think he knows what a good one is from a bad one. Um,
Well, I mean, you look at it now, they have a chance to rebound from that. And it's going to be very interesting because this is a the coaching room in the AFC West got very interesting really quick because, you got Andy Reid there, and he's kind of king of the frat house right now. You bring in Sean Payton. Sean Payton, has that Super Bowl resume from New Orleans. And of course, now he's looking to get it going in Denver. You bring in Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers, and you know the expectations that Harbaugh brings with him. And then you've got Antonio Pierce. And for me, Antonio Pierce is a blue collar type guy because you look at how he came into the NFL. He always played with that chip on his shoulder. He's coached with that chip on his shoulder. And for me, one of the biggest things for me with the Raiders, I think that they are going to be a very physical football team in the trenches this year. They brought in Andrews Pete, the former Pro Bowl guard from the New Orleans Saints. I think he has an opportunity to make an impact on this squad. We know Josh Jacobs left in free agency and he signed with the Green Bay Packers. But you look at Zeus White. It's going to be very interesting to see what Zeus White looks like now as basically you can say the feature back for the Raiders. How do you feel about that?
so as a football coach, I'm real picky about the type of players, and knowing what I know about the team, letting Josh Jacobs go is a very, very, very big deal. I don't know if people really are realizing letting the guy who's basically responsible for those wins you brought up earlier, he carried the offense. And after you let a capable quarterback walk out the door, now you let one of the 3 or 4, maybe top 5 or 6 best pure running backs in the league leave. You have to wonder, where's this offense coming from? I don't trust Jameer Wade right now. He's going to have to show me that he can run with some vision. When we drafted him out of Georgia, he was just an athlete in the backfield. He's got great 40 time. He's a big guy. He's strong. He's got talent. He's got athleticism, but he's nowhere near Josh Jacobs in terms of vision, a lot of quickness, just pure running back play, in the pass game, pass pro. I mean, to bring this guy and have him there, that's one thing. To not bring somebody else in confuses me. There should have been another running back brought in to play alongside him to give you that veteran presence and a proven commodity. So to have him and Alexander Madison as the two backs right now does not leave me in a safe place. And then the kid that they drafted, the Dylan Labe kid, he's talented, but he's a third down back. He's not an every down back. So, between the back and the quarterback, I don't know where this offense comes from.
Well, the Raiders offense, to me, I think is going to be very interesting. And I think, you bring in Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew, he's not a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he's no slouch either. It's one of those. Gardner Minshew is one of those guys. He can throw you into a game. He can also throw you out of a game. But for me, I'm looking at this Raiders offense. The passing attack was 23rd in the National Football League last season. They darn sure had to upgrade the position. There was thoughts about them possibly, taking a quarterback in round number one. Of course, a lot of things changed in the draft when Atlanta took Michael Penix Jr. as early as they did, because then we really saw teams really, maneuvering rather to try to get Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy. And of course, we know what happened there. But, Gardner Minshew is, in my opinion, still an upgrade at the quarterback position in comparison to what the Raiders had last season. For me, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more the next couple of days as well. I think Brock Bowers has a potential to be one of the top rookies this season. It's one of those where I think he was one of the best players available heading into round one this year in the draft. And of course, we know that more often than not, the quarterbacks get all the pub when it comes to round number one. But I really felt like he, along with Marvin Harrison Jr. and probably Joe Alt, were probably three of the best players, coming into this year's NFL draft. You're talking about Brock Bowers, the Mackey Award winner, two-time All-American, two-time national champion. And it's one of those where I really do think his presence is going to take a lot of attention off of Davante Adams. To me, Davante Adams, had a down year last year. A lot of it wasn't his fault. A lot of it was due to the fact of they didn't have a good quarterback play. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I think, a guy like Brock Bowers is going to come in and have an impact on this offense. I really do.
So, the whole Gardner Minshew thing, the only person I could compare him to is Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's like that guy you bring in and, he's great for like 3 or 4 games. And then all of a sudden he comes back down to earth. Except for that one year where Fitzpatrick had that really good year. I
With the
want to say,
Jets.
was it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like the whole year he was magic.
Hmm.
But Minshew has not hit a magical year yet.
Playing for a
And
contract that year. That's what it
yeah,
is.
yeah, well, yeah, no comment. Um, but Minshew to me is a lower tier version of Fitzpatrick. He's not as good as Fitzpatrick. He has a little bit less arm talent, a little bit better athlete, plays with a lot of moxie and heart. And there's a world where if we're playing lights out on defense, he can generate some wins. But like I said to you before, the thing that concerns me is the running back room is not what it was. All right. The offensive line has to play better. We got rookies in there. We don't know what that's going to look like. And he has to be efficient, which he's kind of sort of not. I don't know if you noticed. He's like off schedule, this, that, and then at the end of the day, you got Jacoby Myers along with Davante Adams, and we just don't have a lot of team speed. So it's not really going to be a conventional look. We're going to be out there and a lot of two tight ends. Don't forget about Mayer, the kid we took in the second round last year out of Notre Dame. He's also probably going to benefit from Bowers being there because Bowers will get the attention and he might get the right matchup. And you never know, the football might be ended up going there. So, there's a few things in my mind where I like, okay, there's a world where this works. I'll judge it after the first 3 or 4 games. Jameer White could come in and be lights out. But, to me, he's just no Josh Jacobs when it comes to finding it in there and that on that mid zone scheme and all of those plays that he would just find it, man. He would just be in there finding it. And this is just the thing of beauty to watch him run the football. Is Matt White would get out there and run into the back of blockers half the time. So,
Yeah.
this is just me just using my eyes and being honest about it. I'd love for all these guys to be the best players they are that we think they could be, and catapult the team past where it is. But to have go into season and Gardner Mitchell is your starter, you can't think that, all right, this is the year we go to the Super Bowl. This is not, man. This is a stopgap year, and in a perfect world, and in a world where you have guys thinking rationally, they should have traded Davante Adams during the draft. This is a deep draft for wide receivers. Trade him, get a first or second round pick, draft a replacement, move on. Instead they're treating it like this team is ready to win now. You bring in Gardner Minshew, let your running back go, and then we're kind of sort of in limbo. So I'm a little unsure as to where this season takes us from an offensive standpoint. I'm sure you're going to go to the defense next.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's going to be up and down. I don't think that the Raiders are going to sit up there and be world beaters, but I don't think they're going to be as bad at the same time as some of the pundits, if you will, are going to go out there and project them to be. I mean, you look at it. You got a first-time head coach, but this first-time head coach is no dummy, and I'll tell you why. Because you look at some of the coaches that Antonio Pierce has on the staff. I talked about, him leaning on Tom Coughlin. Okay, Tom Coughlin's clearly not on the staff, but you got Marvin Lewis as an assistant head coach, and of course, Marvin Lewis has a wealth of experience in the NFL. Joe Philbin's a senior offensive assistant. Of course, once upon a time he was a head coach of the Dolphins. Clearly, it didn't work out there. Some of your position coaches, you've got Cadillac Williams as the running backs coach, and of course, if you followed Auburn a couple of years ago when Cadillac was the interim head coach. When Brian Harsin was let go, Cadillac had those guys playing. Okay, and then he stayed last year on Hugh Freeze's staff at Auburn to go out there and make it happen. So, you're bringing in some of those guys. Then you look at it, you got Edgar Bennett, former Green Bay Packers running back at as a wide receivers coach. Patrick Graham was already in place as a defensive coordinator. He's back. You got Rob Ryan as a defensive assistant. And the Ryans know a thing or two about blitzing. You got Ricky Manning as a cornerbacks coach. Ricky Manning, a former defensive back in the NFL. And then you have Andre Carter on this staff as well, former San Francisco 49ers defensive end. So he's established the passing, I mean, pardon me, the coaching ranks, on his staff. He's put together a quality squad. But for me, like I said, this team's they're gonna be tough in the trenches with their line play, both on the offensive side as well as the defensive side. Max Crosby, aside from going to bat for Antonio Pierce, you're talking about a guy who has a high motor, and I guarantee you, if the Raiders had 8 or 9 guys on defense that played with the same type of motor that Max Crosby goes out there and plays, this would be a very lights out defense. There's still talent on that side of the ball. We know what Mad Max is going to bring to the table as an edge rusher. For me, one guy that I'm interested to see how it works out for with the Raiders is going to be Christian Wilkins, because of course we know once upon a time Christian Wilkins, first round pick of the Miami Dolphins, didn't work out there. Okay, but he's coming off of a career year. I think he had maybe 9.5 sacks this past season in Miami. Of course, a lot of that helped with that Vic Fangio defense. You had Van Ginkel on that defense. You had Jalen Phillips. You had Bradley Chubb. Of course, both Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb got hurt, but nonetheless, uh, it was one of those years. It was his walk year for Christian Wilkins in Miami, and now he brings that to the Raiders. So let's see, okay, if that was, a flash in the pan moment, or what, this guy has really turned the corner. Another guy that I think is going to fly under the radar, and I think he can have an impact for this Raiders defense is going to be rookie linebacker Tommy Eichenberg out of the Ohio State University. He's just one of those guys to me, and I said this for the last couple of years watching him play in the Big Ten. He's a football player. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. he's an Antonio Pierce type guy, and I think he has the potential to do something as a rookie for the Raiders. And then, of course, you look at this back end with the likes of Jack Jones, and of course, Antonio Pierce and Jack Jones go way back. I mean, it's one of those. I do believe Antonio Pierce coached Jack Jones at Cal Poly in high school, Arizona State, and now he's got him here in the pros. So I'm looking at this Raiders defense, and they're going to have their moments this year. And like I've been saying all preseason long, if you're going to go out there and beat the Raiders this year, you better pack a lunch, man.
Well, let's talk about that defense. The whole Christian Wilkins thing is going to be interesting because Max Crosby's never had that kind of interior talent playing right next to him before. So I would love to see how offensive game plan versus that. But it's not just them. There's a guy you didn't name. Well, two guys you didn't name. So you got Tyree Wilson, the high draft pick from the year before, who's just a piece of clay, big, tall, athletic guy. Didn't do much, doesn't really know how to do much, still pretty stiff, doesn't use his hands well. And we have to get something out of this guy. So is he the guy that gets the one-on-one? Now there's another guy, New York guy. I'm not sure if you know that, went to Stepinac High School. Malcolm Kuntz, who the Raiders drafted out of Buffalo. He might be that guy who ends up getting off because of Christian Wilkins, because then that'll be Max Crosby with attention, Christian Wilkins with attention, and now Malcolm Kuntz might be the guy that gets his chance. He's a bit of a leaner guy, not a huge guy, but he's really good, got a pass rush knack, and he could be the guy that gets off because of the addition of Christian Wilkins. Now you name Eichenberg, but the linebackers happen to be a bit of a misnomer, kind of sort of. We don't know if Eichenberg cracks the starting lineup. The other kid there, the Devon Diablo, was a former safety out of Virginia Tech, played well, but we know the Raiders haven't been that stout versus the run with these guys in there. So since they let Denzel Perryman go, we haven't really been like attacking that run game and really shutting down teams' run. We've been allowing too much rush yards. Jack Jones, I was really hyped about. I pop in the preseason game where I figured they were going to play the starters, and he gets beat for a touchdown by a rookie sixth rounder. A little disturbing. Kid made a good move in the red zone, hit him for a fake ball. It didn't even look difficult. Like, he wasn't there to challenge it. The guy didn't. He just beat him with the route, caught the ball, nobody next to him. Jack Jones covering him. I was like, wow. I had to look the kid up after that. I was like, whoa, who's this guy? Rookie on the Cowboys. I mean, I forgot his name, but he's good. And Trey Lance threw the touchdown, the same guy who just threw 5 interceptions today. So take for that what you will. I turned that game off a little concerned. Again, though, ones played a lot of that game. In the safety area, I did like the addition of Marcus Epps. I thought he was very solid. He was a stabilizing force back there. Trayvon Merrick has been solid. Not spectacular, but really solid. But we still have another problem. It has to be another corner on the other side of Jack Jones. And, they got Jacorian Bennett, who they drafted out of Maryland last year. We don't know what we're going to get out of him. He was starting at the beginning of last year, played himself off the field. So my hopes of us having this really good defense kind of sort of got shaken up a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
After watching the ones play against twos, So, that's how I feel about that. It's just a little shaky for me in that space. I mean, Max Crosby's that guy. You can depend on him. Him being ranked the number 10 player in the league at the top 100 kind of sort of was like, wow. Raiders took this guy with a 4th round pick right after they got rid of Khalil Mack, and you find this guy. It's like,
Yeah, Mad Max, he's one of those guys. He I think he's playing for the Raiders like 40 or 50 years too late. And the reason why I say that is he's one of those guys, he would have fit in that off on that defensive line with the likes of Howie Long and Lyle Alzado, Ted Hendricks at outside linebacker, Reggie Kinlaw, so many others, for the Raiders.
Greg Townsend. Don't forget Greg Townsend. You got to say his name.
Greg Townsend was a man. There's no other way to say it, okay? But nonetheless, Max Crosby, he would have fit into, that realm because he's that type of guy. He's the type of player that the late John Madden, would have fallen in love with. He's the type of player that the late Al Davis, okay, would have fallen in love with for the way he plays defense. But nonetheless, I mean, I look at it like this with the Raiders. They're going to have a tough go at it out of the gate, in my opinion. They've got two very tough games to begin the season. They're at the Chargers, and then they're at Baltimore. And the Chargers with Harbaugh, he wants to go out there and establish his system. Okay, and then you're at the Ravens. We just saw the Ravens get to the AFC Championship game last year. They've still got a good squad. So basically, you got the Harbaugh brothers in back-to-back weeks. But right after that, the Raiders do have an opportunity to kind of get something going in the win column because the first two are on the road. Three out of the next four are at home. And you look at it, they've got Carolina. Carolina's probably going to be bad again. They've got Cleveland. We don't know what's going to be up with Deshaun Watson's arm at this point, okay? They're at Denver. I don't think Denver is going to be as bad as some people think they are because, Sean Payton does have his quarterback now, the guy that he wants in Bo Nix. And then they're home for Pittsburgh. And it's one of those situations where Pittsburgh, at least here in the preseason, they haven't figured it out yet offensively either. So I think if the Raiders can get past week two, they can find like they have an opportunity to get into somewhat of a rhythm if they can figure it out.
Well, um, I won't discredit that part of it. I mean, like I really don't know what to expect this year, bro. Like, normally I'll be like, oh, we'll be this good, we'll be that good. I have no idea what we're gonna see. The amount of variables that exist on this team
Hmm.
is a lot. And the way the Raiders have things set up, you don't know how they are going to manage these things. So we can all speculate in terms of what they think is going to happen. We are going to all be in a position to where it's going to be kind of a wait and see. And like I said to you, in the first three games, we'll have the answer to all of this.
Yeah, thinking about the Raiders season this year, because first things first, I'm gonna go out there and tell you right now, I don't think they're gonna be a playoff team. Okay, I really don't. But it's one of those situations where you look at them and it's kind of like playing spades. And it's like I got three and a couple of possibles. That's basically all it is. You know what I mean? But I think the biggest thing for me with the Raiders is that I look at them and I think it's for me it's just one of those deals where we gotta like you said, we just gotta wait and see. I think they're going to have some highs. I think they're going to have some lows. I'll tell you like this. I'm really looking forward to the two games with Kansas City because again, we saw them split with the Chiefs last year. They jumped out to a double-digit lead against Kansas City at home. And of course, we've heard the comments this offseason from Antonio Pierce as far as, like the Jordan rules go for Patrick Mahomes. It's one of those where, listen, at the end of the day, no quarterback likes pressure. No quarterback likes to be on the run, this, that, and the third. So the Raiders got to get after him. I get that, but again, like I said, this division as a whole just got very, very interesting because I think, you're going to have very competitive games. Raiders, Chiefs, you just simply throw the rule book out always. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. All four of these teams, they go back to the AFL. But you think about it, the Broncos, they're trying to figure things out under Sean Payton. The Chargers are trying to get it going under Jim Harbaugh. And then, of course, like I said, you got Kansas City. They're the kings of the mountain right now. But I think the Raiders definitely fit into this equation. It's one of them. I could see them winning 7 games. I could see them possibly winning 8 games. But it's just one of those deals where, like I said before, if you're going to beat this team, you better pack a lunch to do it. And it's one of those where, especially for the division games, because beating your divisional opponents 2 times in a year is difficult anyway. But I think it's also one of those where with this Raiders team, you're really going to have to pack a lunch to try to figure it out, you know?
Well, the team is going to be tough. It was tough last year. And as they like to say, teams take on the personality of the coaches. So you have Antonio Pierce. He's a tough, hard-nosed guy, and he's not accepting anything less than a tough, hard-nosed team. And every loss should be a hard-fought loss. They're just still going to be losses. Man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's going to be losses in there. But like I said, if they can get past the first 2 games, I think they've got, an opportunity to try to do something. Because I mean, there's nobody really on their schedule that you can say, hey, you know what, they're world beaters. You know, week 7 they're at the Rams. The Rams might be rebuilding this year because again, how do you replace Aaron Donald at D tackle? Then you got Kansas City at home in week 8. Then you're at Cincinnati. You got your bye in week 10. You're at Miami coming out of the bye, but then you got Denver at home, and then you're on the road for 2 straight weeks, Kansas City, Tampa Bay. You come back and you got 3 out of your last 4 at home. Atlanta, Jacksonville, you're at New Orleans, so you get to face your old friend Derek Carr, and then you finish up at home against the Chargers, which should be an interesting game. I just think the Raiders, to me, I think they're going to be up and down. I think they're going to have some exciting moments, but like I said, it's one of those where you're really going to have to pack a lunch to go out there and beat this team. And for me, I still do believe that the Raiders are heading in the right direction because, first and foremost, I think they got the head coaching hire right. Okay. I think Mark Davis was man enough to push his ego aside and realize, you know what? Having Josh McDaniels around was going to make my franchise worse than what it already was. And I think, you go back and you look at the Josh McDaniels disaster that was in Denver. Okay, I think that should have been red flag right there to never go back and try to hire this guy again. But then, of course, he got the Indianapolis job, left them at the altar. I really do think if Josh McDaniels was going to get another job, it should have been New England because he understood how things were run there. But of course, that was not the case. But nonetheless, getting back to the Raiders, I do believe they finally gotten the head coaching hire right. I just think that you need that stability as a franchise if you're going to go out there and win. First and foremost, three most important positions you need stability in: general manager, head coach, and quarterback. So I think right now at least the Raiders have 2 out of the 3 because I don't think that Gardner Minshew is a long-term answer for the Raiders, and I think Gardner Minshew thinks that he's not the long-term answer for the Raiders, but he was the best viable option that they feel that they had at the quarterback position, and he darn sure gives them a better opportunity to win some football games this year. But I definitely do think that this team is trending upwards, at least
Well, you do.
at least from where they were.
Well, you do know Ryan Tannehill is still a free agent. I'd probably feel a little bit better about it if it was him. And
Hmm.
not to say I like him at all. It's just you could have easily just signed Ryan Tannehill, a proven guy that has a longer track record for success than Gardner Minshew.
Hmm.
Um, at the same time, I'd reorder that. I'd put quarterback as the most important thing over head coach and general manager. First, you have to have the quarterback, then you have to have the head coach, and I'd put general manager third. Here's why. The quarterback will be the one leading you. The general manager will be the one getting you players. And the third will be the quarterback, will be the coach, the head coach to develop this. It is all in one vision. And that's why the Patriots lasted for so long, not because of Belichick, as we got to see, because of
Tom
Brady.
Brady, right?
So, and now you got Mahomes in Kansas City. And don't forget, Kansas City still has the best defense in our division. So I don't know where this goes, man. I'm extremely interested to see. The best thing about it is I'm not expecting much because I know the team is devoid of talent in a lot of key areas. They need these rookie offensive linemen to step up right now.
Right.
Andrews Pete, they also signed Cody White here. So these guys all have to play well right now. And the perfect storm of getting things right that has to happen for this team to be successful in terms of getting 10 games, they need to get you in the playoffs last year, maybe. So, with the extra game added to the season, you got to win like 11.
Right.
I just don't see. Because
So
then you still have to have enough leeway to allow Kansas City to have a great season, which they probably will, barring injuries, and you still give yourself a chance in the wild card area, and that leaves you in a battle where you might need 11 wins. It won't be 10 or 9. What we won was 8 and 9 last year. So I don't know, man. We got to win that first game against the Chargers. I don't think that's a game where we can allow anything to be any less than a win, because the Chargers are kind of sort of on a downswing a little bit, and they have a lot of unknowns. They lost a lot of players too. Lost Eckler. You got to
Keenan
beat the
Allen.
Chargers,
Right.
right? Keenan Allen, they traded, so you need to beat the Chargers. Now, all right, the next game, okay, all right, maybe we could go down there and lose that game, but you got to beat the Chargers if you want to do anything. When you lose to the Chargers, I don't know. But
Yeah, that was
again, like I said, I'm interested to see how this all works out. I'm very interested.
yeah, that was going to be my next question to you. Is like how do you feel about the first game of the season? But you basically summed it up right there. So, what's your win-loss projection for your beloved Raiders for this season?
7-9,
7-10 or 8-9?
7-10.
7-10. I'm gonna go 8-9 again, and it's one of those where I put the Raiders, I put the Broncos, and I put the Chargers all in the same category. Clearly, all three of them are chasing Kansas City in this division. But secondly, I think all three of these teams are going to be better in the second half of the season than the first half. I think Antonio Pierce is establishing what he wants. And for me, like I said before, Gardner Minshew is a guy. He's going to have flashes. He's not going to be a guy that's going to put it together. Put together 17 good games throughout the season. He's going to have some moments like, oh man, he made that play, and then he's going to have those moments as well, like, what are you doing? The run game, but like I said, Brock Bowers is a guy to keep an eye on, and I really like, him, Davante Adams, and Jacoby Myers all together as receiving options in this passing game for the Raiders. And then, like I said, this defense, they're going to get after you at times, and this is clearly, probably the best team that they've had since, Gruden was there. Second time around, of course. But nonetheless, I think finally they have some semblance of order. And it's probably not going to be this year. But I do see, them trending towards some stability. That's something that the Raiders have not had in a month of Sunday. So I'm going to go 8-9.
It'd be hard for me to agree that this is the best team since Gruden was there.
Well,
Those
not best team, stability. Stability.
It's gonna be hard, man. It's gonna be hard to see. This could really fall flat, William.
Mm.
I'm like just really saying to myself, like, this could be okay. This could be really bad. Gardner Minshew's turnover prone. That's another problem. And the other kid, O'Connell, he's not mobile. He
Right.
cannot get out of the way of anything. Now, is he accurate? Is he an accurate thrower of the football? Yes. But he is very immobile. And that's the question you didn't ask, which is what I thought you were going to ask, is why did you think that they chose Minshew? And it's 100% because of his mobility and his ability to play off schedule. Because if that team is going to win as it is constructed, they're going to have to make plays they're not supposed to make. It's not like
Right.
these guys are going to win all their matchups because of his back foot. And that guy who's supposed to be open is going to be open.
Right.
You brought up Brock Bowers, and the reason why the Raiders had to take him and why they could take him is because the team is still technically talent devoid, meaning you don't have that much overall talent on the team. So when you don't have that, you have to take the most talented player that's there. And he by far was that. Um, I'm a Penix guy. I really like Penix. I thought he was going to slot. I couldn't believe that they drafted him. And, this is a Raiders show. We talk about the Raiders. But I read something the other day that Atlanta benched him because he was playing too well and didn't want to be playing anymore in the preseason. So this is just a total hilarity of events that happened after this draft with these quarterbacks, man. Everybody got nervous and all kind of things happened. So I don't know.
No, listen, I think it's going to be very interesting. Give or take. For the silver and black this season. Like again, like I said, they're going to be very competitive. Not saying they're going to be world beaters every single week, but nonetheless, like I said before, you're going to have to go out there and pack a lunch to beat this squad. But with that said, man, any final thoughts on your beloved Raiders before we sign off, man? Coach D, are you there? Or did you drop off?
I'm
Okay.
here.
Yeah, no, I was just asking
Um,
any final thoughts on your beloved silver and black, man?
well, I am gonna say no matter what happens this year, I hope they are not quick to fire Pierce. He needs a chance to have a team with some talent on it and a real chance to win before he is deemed a coach that can't handle it. Too many times coaches don't get good teams and they get placed in positions where they're not set up to be successful and they're held to a standard as if you had, you know, 7 Pro Bowlers on your team. So hopefully these rookies develop, especially the ones on the offensive line, and maybe, just maybe, something strange will happen. I just don't see it with Minshew. I would have been more comfortable with a total unknown had they drafted a guy. I might have been a little bit more excited, but having seen so much of Minshew just gives me a little bit of reservation there.
Oh, I mean, like I said with Minshew, he's going to have his ups and downs because it's going to be one of those things. He's going to make a spectacular play, and then there's going to be something where, all right, should have been routine. You're like, dude, what are you doing? But I do think, though, getting back to the head coach, I think Mark Davis is going to be patient with Antonio Pierce because you can't keep going back every 2 or 3 years saying we got to do this over again. Of course, clearly, you know, Gruden getting fired was something totally different. Josh McDaniels was a washout. They did have some success with Jack Del Rio because he did get them to the playoffs for the first time in a month of Sundays. But I mean, after they lost the Super Bowl in 2002. I mean, Bill Callahan lasted one more season. North Turner lasted two. Art Shell was there for one. Lane Kiffin didn't make 2 seasons. Tom Cable had 2.5 years. Hugh Jackson had 1 year. Dennis Allen got 2.5 years. So it's one of those where, and like even before that, going back to when they first went back to Oakland, Joe Bugle got a year. Mike White got two. The last guy that had more than 4 years as the Raiders head coach was Art Shell, and that goes back to when they were still in LA. And Art Shell got them to the playoffs 3 times, and they only had one losing season under Art Shell. You can't, sit up there and have all of this turnover at head coach so consistently and think you're going to be a successful team. And of course, once upon a time, the Raiders as a franchise did have the greatest winning percentage in the league. But a lot of that was due to the fact that they didn't have that turnover at the head coaching position. Look how long John Madden was there. Look how long Tom Flores was there. And then after that, Mike Shanahan was there for like a cup of coffee. You had Art Shell there for a couple of years, but after that, it's basically just been a revolving door, and you can't
And never forget they brought our show back.
yeah, they brought him back for 1 year and it didn't work out. And then,
Mhm.
that was when like Al Davis was getting towards the end himself. But nonetheless, I think, Mark Davis realizes he needs some stability. And I think he's going he's going to give Antonio Pierce every single opportunity to go out there and do this thing. And I think I like I said, I think AP has respect to that locker room, and those guys will run through a wall for him. So I think right there, he's already ahead of the curve. And I don't think the Raiders are going to be bad. Like, okay, we're going to be picking in the top five if you're a Raiders fan. No. But I do, like, again, like I said, they're going to be very, very competitive. And if there's a guy on that team that's not going to compete, guess what? AP's not going to have a spot for you on his squad. And then you have leaders like a Max Crosby who are going to go out there and hold guys accountable for things as well. So again, I'm not going out there and saying this Raiders team is a playoff team. I'm not going out there and saying this Raiders team is a Super Bowl team. But like I said, they are going to be competitive. That's that's my
Well,
that's my take on it.
and I'll give you another last take that just came to me while you were talking, and because you were talking about the whole coaching stability thing, and that's my biggest concern. But the other big concern is, and I'm going to ask you a really good question. The team needs a quarterback. Who is he, and where does he come from?
Hold up, I didn't hear
How
that.
you?
Can
I
you
said
repeat?
the team still needs a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Who is he, and where does he come from? So,
Well,
like, that's not a question for you to answer right now. But what I'm saying to you is that's how I'm thinking
hmm
because you're not going to win without a quarterback.
absolutely
So,
not.
who is he? Where does he come from? And you're going to strike out a few times before you get him. And I understood the whole going after Jaden McDaniels, not Jaden, Josh McDaniels, Jaden Daniels, really hard. Like, but I realized that somebody was smart enough to say, okay, this kid's in. We don't need to trade this pick, and that's how
hmm
come the Raiders weren't able to get him. But we don't have a quarterback. Raiders don't have a quarterback. Who is he, and where does he come from?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Gardner Minshew's a stopgap guy. I mean, at the most, maybe Gardner Minshew's on the Raiders for this season and next year, but he's not the next coming of Ken Stabler or Jim Plunkett. Don't get me wrong. So they definitely have to go out there and find that long-term stability, whether it's via trade, whether it's drafting, whether it's free agency. We don't know, but nonetheless, I think at least for the short term, he gives the Raiders a chance. I'm not going to go out there and say Gardner Minshew's an MVP candidate or nothing like that, because again, like I'm not trying to sound like a broken record. He's going to do some things that you're like, wow, but then he's going to do some things like that you're going to like, dude, really? Uh, so again, like I said, competitive is the best way for me to sum up the season for the Silver and Black potentially.
Hopefully, William. Hopefully.
But Coach D, as always, my man, it's truly a pleasure to have you on this platform, man, and share it with you, man.
William, my brother forever, man.
Listen, listen, trust me,
Always.
this is always a special moment, and for me, I'm gonna definitely be touching base with you on the Raiders as the season goes along. Think about it, in a progress report type fashion. But that's the thing because I really want to see how they're going to compete. That for me is the biggest thing, and I definitely want to get your takes on it, man. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out once again to show some love to Coach Dennis Ward for joining us on this special edition of the podcast as we took this time to concentrate on the silver and black. Yes, those Las Vegas Raiders. And for everybody out there, if you like what you saw and heard, please feel free to hit that like button as well as a subscribe button on this channel. You can also check me out on Twitter at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. You can also check me out on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. And for Coach Dennis Ward, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off once again, thanking all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.